Awesome. Thanks, Chaitali. Appreciate it. Hi, everyone. How's it going?
Great, yeah.
Yeah, wonderful,
Very
man.
good.
Good. Hi, Christina. Nice to see you.
Yeah, nice to see you, Bobby.
Awesome. Well, let me just make one more plug. If you're in a position to start your video, that would be awesome. It just makes the session a little bit more interactive, and we can have a conversation together. I will be asking you questions and asking you to interact with each other and with me, and so it's just a lot more helpful if I can see you. Just a few things about me. I'm a faculty member here at the Darden Business School, where I've taught for the last, this is my 14th year teaching at Darden. I was also a Darden MBA, and so I know what it's like to sit in your seats. I did the 2-year MBA and then the PhD afterwards. And so happy to answer questions both from a faculty member perspective as well as my recollection of what Darden was like as a student way back in the day. By training, I'm a social psychologist, and so a lot of my work is in the context of leadership and decision making. I've also been trained in moral philosophy, and so I'm lucky enough to teach business ethics at Darden, which is a place where we've got phenomenal students who come to Darden who care deeply about business ethics, who push us faculty to get better at our discipline, and are always helping us understand and unpack cutting edge issues, which is phenomenal. I'm going to share my screen here so we can kind of dive in to a mini case discussion. You won't get the full 85-minute experience, but we'll do about a 45-minute experience and then have some time for Q&A. And if the time changes, we'll work with that. All right, can everybody see that slide? That's just a picture of Darden. All right, so you shouldn't expect any major content, but here's a scenario. I'm just going to put forth the scenario and then we'll talk about it a little bit. So give me just a minute or two to set it up. All right, so I want you to imagine that you are a partner at a top investment bank, and you're in the process of deciding between two great candidates to receive a promotion to vice president. And I'm going to present the two candidates to you. The first candidate is a woman named Charlie Pace. And Charlie is the top performer by a small margin. She recently closed a $20 million client. She volunteers at local charities. She graduated a top-tier business school, well-liked by many of her colleagues. The second candidate is a woman named Danielle Faraday. She recently also closed a client, but a little bit less in value, about 12 million rather than 20. She has a young family, so she's pretty busy. She's also taking care of her father, who's not feeling well, so she's got a lot of responsibilities at home. She graduated from a less-known business school, but she worked at a competitor, and she built a really strong reputation, and so we were able to poach her away from the competitor. What's complicated about this particular decision is that one day in the restroom, you overhear Pace, the first candidate, talking to a junior colleague. And the junior colleague comes up to Pace and says, "How do you do it? You do so much. You're a rock star here at the firm. Everybody is in awe of you. How do you have all this energy?" And she says, "Look, I go to my doctor. I tell my doctor that I have a hard time concentrating. Things get kind of fuzzy. And I ask for a prescription for a drug called Adderall. And Adderall is basically a stimulant. It's mildly addictive. And by taking Adderall, people who usually take Adderall have something called ADHD, or attention deficit hyperactive disorder. And at least in the United States, there is a rise in what's called off-label use. Off-label use is without a real doctor's prescription. People are taking Adderall on college campuses to study for exams, in sports competitions and things like that. It's not as heavily regulated as other substances. So you hear this information in the restroom. You're not seen by Pace or the junior colleague who walk out before seeing you. And now you've got to make this decision about what to do. You didn't have this information before, but now you have this information. So I'm gonna open it up at this point for you all to react. And I'm going to capture some of your reactions, and I'll ask you questions and have you talk to each other. But I'm curious, just based on this initial scenario, what are your reactions? You can raise your physical hand, or if you're more comfortable, you can raise your Zoom hand. If you don't raise anything, I will call on you. Who's got something that they'd like to say? I'm going to start with Jigar because you have such a nice smile. I see you over there. You look so happy. Jigar, tell me what you're thinking.
Right off the bat, it's a tough situation.
Yeah.
If I had no information about the Adderall thing, I would probably go with the first candidate because on just a quantitative basis, she delivered a higher value to the firm.
That's right.
Yeah.
It would be nice to only base it to only base the decision on
Objective measures.
Yeah. But we're not in, we don't have that luxury today. But it's a good thought. Thank you. Thanks for starting us off. I know it's not an easy thing. How about you, Melam?
Well, I too would go with the first candidate. I think I'm not sure whether the information that I hear is correct, is not correct. So I would just go on the quantitative basis.
Okay, wait a second. So say more about this. What do you mean the information is correct or not correct?
It might be possible that she's in the sense that it might be possible that the information that I've got out there is not completely accurate. I would, before taking up a decision on that, I would just like to have possibly have a word with her if there's certain things that are taking her down, and then possibly then take a decision. But just on the basis of the information I have, quantitatively, I would go with the first candidate.
Okay, fantastic. But so I like this point you're raising that maybe what was said in the restroom was inaccurate. Maybe she was just trying to put on a strong face for the junior colleague. You don't know, and so you feel uncomfortable basing a decision just on this low quality of information. Is that fair?
Yes, that is. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Great point. Vanisha.
Yeah. I would like to say that she took a prescription medicine, and like you said, that she went to her doctor and she mentioned that, she had attention issues, which is what the Adderall drug is for. And if her doctor, after all the analysis, prescribes her that medicine, then what's wrong in taking that medicine and then, continuing her job? Maybe I don't know.
It's a really good point. Isn't it the doctor's responsibility to figure out if she really has whatever condition that she claims she has? It's not our responsibility. We're just the manager here, right? Right. Maybe she doesn't. Yeah. Maybe she does. Maybe she doesn't. It's not our place to decide. Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. It's a really good point. Others, I see some folks are unmuting their cameras. How about you, Avinash?
Yeah, so I think you have already mentioned that it's a she's taking a non-prescription medicine over the counter. So there is a possibility perhaps she might be addicted, but there is also a chance that she's also suffering from ADHD. So it might be a genuine case for her, but we cannot judge based on solely that it's reasonable to say that she is just addicted to some drug for concentrating on something.
Okay, so it's connected back to the second point here, which is maybe the information wasn't accurate. Maybe she really does have ADHD, but she could have been embarrassed or didn't want to share her private information. And so we don't know. Okay, it's good. So I've heard 4 people now really say, look, maybe we should just focus on the performance here and not deal with this. Does anybody want to make the opposite argument? Does anybody want to make an argument for why we might pay attention to this or might promote Faraday? Pratik.
Sure. Okay. I guess someone unmuted themselves. I'll wait for them to speak and then jump
No,
in.
you can go ahead. Go for it.
Okay. I did agree with the way Jigar put it. That's, hey, I'm a
Look how
manager.
happy he is. He's so happy. Look, he's just smiling.
Yeah. Then, hey, I'm a manager. I come to office. I, collect data, make decisions based on promotion, just on data. But I see there's a slippery slope here. So if I end up promoting this person, I end up promoting a behavior, and that might perpetuate some kind of a behavior within my team. And I want to be concerned about this. Yeah.
So what exactly is your concern about this particular behavior and how it might spread throughout the team or the organization? What's the problem with this?
I mean, this is one of the reasons why I did not get to IB banking. Chatali, watch out. But I know this might be half truth, but this is some kind of a behavior that the lady's name, was it Pace?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Pace is definitely influencing. So she is a good performer. She's influencing people, to get onto a certain lifestyle that brings them onto the fast track, faster promotions. And as a manager, I do care about about how my team functions and not just on their performance. So I've been taking Ed Freeman's classes. So
Awesome, Prateek. Thank you. Good. I appreciate that. How about you, Drew?
Yeah, so I think most of the points which were going through my head have been covered already. Like, basically, we need to investigate a bit more about why they are taking ADHD, the background, and consult with some experts who would know, rather than take decisions based on like your view of the drug or general view of the things. And yeah, I still have a bit of a leaning towards like what was said earlier about like making decisions based on data. And so like if the 20 million deal is better, if the employee is a better employee for the team, for the firm, I might want to go with that. But also I want to explore the other side. Like even I'm curious why we should not actually go with her. So I'm thinking about points for the other side also. Yeah.
Okay. Drew, tell me a little bit more. So I like this idea of consulting with experts. You might call up, a friend who's a physician and get a better sense of what some of the risk factors are or side effects of Adderall use. But what are you going to do? You're going to talk to Pace and say, hey, I heard you in the bathroom talking about Adderall. Do you want to take a blood test before you come to the strategy meeting? Like, how is this going to go?
Yeah, so that would be a very cruel way to actually like deal with the thing. So yeah, we'll have to firstly like talk to the experts and understand why would someone take Adderall. Is it something to go from a good state to something better, like if it's a performance enhancer, or if it's like if the person suffering from ADHD to get to the normal state, like why are they taking it, or to get an edge or to just become normal? That might be a thing which I want to figure out. And yeah, like you said, have a conversation with her. But yeah, again, like I'll have to think through the entire approach of how to phrase the first question, how to like tackle the issue and get like make the person comfortable, but also get the most amount of information out of them so that we can make our decision properly.
Okay. All right, let's see. Pranav has been waiting patiently. Thank you, Drew.
Sure.
Oh, you're muted.
Oh, sorry, I was on mute. Okay.
No,
Good morning, everyone. I just want to highlight, I would surely pick the second one compared to the first one, Pace. I have a couple of reasons for it. The first thing is that she's coming from a different background. Like, she has struggled her way up the ladder. It's not a straight linear path for her. So I presume she'll be more motivated than the first person. And that would drive her to achieve better results into the firm. So because she's coming from a lesser known college, like you mentioned. And the second point I would like to say is even her at personal level, she's been struggling because probably she's a young mother or someone like of that. So she has overcome certain odds to prove herself in a major investment banking firm.
Okay.
So that shows her drive, and like giving a leadership role will definitely give us a better results going into the like the next stage of her career. So
you're really impressed by her work ethic. You're impressed by the fact that she's had a difficult go of it, but she's still succeeding despite the fact that she's juggling a lot of things.
Yeah, she's juggling a lot of things, and the way you have shown the results, like one is 20 million and the other is 12 million, the quantification of the deal doesn't show they are in different levels or different leagues. Okay, there are similar deals, like 12 or 20 is nothing in an investment bank, like, you know.
What's
like
8 million between friends, huh?
True, but someone, if you have had an experience of 12 million, wouldn't you give a deal which is worth 20 million in the next deal?
Okay, so maybe this is a path. Like you don't see this as a detriment. Like maybe she's on an upward path here.
Yeah, I think the difference is marginal. Like if once she gets the experience, she will definitely get onto the 20 million. What matters in the long run is the drive you have got. The ability to push others also depends on your drive rather than the experience. That's what I think.
Thanks, Pranav. Awesome. Great job. Let me go to Agam and then I'll come to you next, Melam, okay? I see your hand. Don't worry.
Hey, so I just want to point out that so it's hearsay that Pace takes the drug, but we don't know about Faraday. We don't have the data. Maybe she does too.
Oh, so we're missing data about Faraday. Maybe everybody just gets together at this investment bank and is just doing Adderall, you know, in the afternoons, and we don't know. We have no idea. And so maybe we're acting on information that is biased in some way.
Yep.
Great point. Great point. Go ahead, Melam.
Thank you. Now, I did pick Pace in the first go, but on an afterthought, I feel that the reputation of the company is based on the reputation of the employees. Now, if it gets leaked out that she is faking symptoms and getting medication, then she might be possibly fudging data to get her work done, or she might not be taking up ethical practices at times, because this is a big case of an unethical behavior, and I am not sure that I would want such a person. I'm actually pretty much sure that I would not want such a person taking up a higher position. So what I would try to do in such a scenario is that I would try to have a conversation with Pace. I would try to talk possibly about try to strike conversation of the benefits of taking such stimulants, and how does it affect performance, and how does it boost performance. And if it perspires during such a conversation that she is actually faking symptoms she's actually faking symptoms and getting medicines, then I would surely not select her.
Okay, so how is this going to go exactly? Are you gonna come out and just say, "Hey, I heard this. I heard you say this in the bathroom," or are you gonna say, "I have a cousin. My cousin takes Adderall. You know, she had big problems in her life. Now she's in jail." Like, how is this going to go exactly, man? Like, how are you going to bring this up?
I would possibly try to just come up with a conversation. I would say that there are statistics that shows that taking such stimulants has proven to be really effective in improving performance, and then see how she goes about it, and try to wiggle out some information from her.
Okay, random fun fact: Adderall actually has these side effects. Okay, good. All right, good thinking here. Good thinking. I like the way that you're coming at this. Let's get a couple more folks in here, and then I'm going to transition. I have another question for you. How about you, Raman? What are you thinking?
I actually agree with Mehem. Looking like the given data right now, it feels like the downside risk of hiring Pace is more than that the other candidate looks more ethical and I would prefer to go with her.
Oh, Faraday, too much downside risk. Yeah, it's an interesting perspective, right? We've been thinking about it from the perspective of performance, but is it enough of a marginal benefit to take the risk, right? Most companies have many applicants for the same position. You've got good folks. Why increase your risk? It's a really good point. It's a really good point. Anybody else have anything that we haven't talked about that we want to make sure that we're either get some clarification on or share our perspective? Okay, it's pretty good. Here's my next question. Let's assume for a second that you do find out that she's faking these symptoms. All right, so she doesn't actually have ADHD, but she's faking these symptoms to take Adderall. Under what conditions would you consider this fair? Is it fair to compete by, how is this different, for example, than me drinking a cup of coffee? What do you think?
Bobby?
Yeah.
Can I seek it? I guess I would like to compare this scenario with recreational drugs when they were banned. And so at that point in time, what action did the company take when there was not clear understanding of the implications of these drugs, and look back and, create similar structures in place to deal with this problem?
Yeah, so is there a policy for other drugs? Right, probably there's a policy for illegal drugs, but as someone said there, she's got a prescription for this, right? It's a good question. It's a really good question. What else do we got here? What would make this fair or unfair?
So the second thing is people also take performance enhancement drug just as testosterone shot, which you do, before cycling or something like that, which is nothing but like 10
I
cups
don't
of
know.
coffee.
This is new information to me. Are you sharing personal information here? No, I'm just kidding.
No. It's basically nothing but like 10 shots of coffee in a single cup of coffee. So if people are doing those kind of things, are these things comparable? And is it just because she's female, she has more pressure to perform and she needs to take this drug?
Yeah, okay, it's a good question. Does anybody have a sense? Does anybody know, how does this compare? Darshan, thank you. Is this similar to other recreational drugs? Is it similar to coffee, testosterone shots? Like, what's a good comparison here? What do you think?
May I?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. I think it's comparable to performance enhancing drugs in the sports industry, like testosterone shots or something. So even Olympians have to take a dope test before their races or their matches. So and to keep it a level playing field, it is ensured that no one is taking any of these drugs. So I would say comparable to the sports industry. And in this case, if it is established that she is taking this particular drug without having symptoms for it, so she is sort of breaking the balance of that level playing field.
Okay, so you say that she's competing unfairly.
Yep.
Okay, yeah, go ahead, Dhruv.
To answer your question, I think to compare Adderall to other substances, I think it's definitely stronger than coffee from what I've heard. So I've in movies or in pop culture, whatever we've seen, it's not as it's more stronger than 10 cups of coffee or whatever is the unit which we are comparing against. And for other recreational drugs, I think if you're talking about marijuana or something, those drugs are not performance enhancers in terms of recreational drugs, and the other ones which are enhancers are definitely things which are looked down upon. And if so if we have to place it in categories of other things which make you better or something, then then it's on the other side of it. It's something which gives you an unfair advantage and has a lot of drawbacks, and basically it has the darker side to it also. But again, this is something which I'll do secondary research on. I'll talk to people. I'll Google before just going by what I've seen in movies and stuff. Yeah.
Okay, so I think that's a good sense here. So we've got some folks saying it is an unfair advantage. Other folks, maybe it's like coffee. Maybe we should do something about it. Go ahead, Pranav. Still muted. Pranav, you're muted.
Oh, again.
I could tell it was good though. I could just see it in your eyes.
Okay. So yeah, I was just thinking about this point, like, why are we focusing our decision on promoting someone based on this drug, like whether she's faking her symptoms is that the question here? Like,
yeah, I think, we're trying to figure out how relevant this is. So are you saying that this is not relevant?
Not really relevant, because like how it's impacting her performance is what matters rather than her. Like if she's faking her symptoms to take a certain drug, like let's assume she's taking once in a month and it's not affecting, it's affecting her performance on a busy deal closure day, and she's not having any symptoms of addictiveness, or she's not having symptoms of anything which is negative. Unless it has a significant impact on her mind or her psychological behavior, it's not relevant, right? So if she's taking once in a month, like during the deal closure day, like when she's working for like 24 hours for like a couple of days. So if she's taking the drug that day, it's not really relevant. But if she's taking more regular basis, it's gonna affect her behavior, like addictiveness, like you said, or like there are a lot of other symptoms, right?
Okay, so I hear you saying, look, depending on the amount she's using, it could be more or less relevant. But right now, it feels like maybe this is just her personal business. Maybe it's not. Maybe this is not a professional matter at all. I could take down this slide and we could talk about something else if you don't think this is relevant.
And also, I wanted to point out one thing, like when certain drug is given without any prescription, so it's not, the government doesn't think that it's an illegal drug or something. And
well, it's a controlled substance, right? It's controlled because you have to have a prescription for it. So Pranav, let's say we say, look, this is a personal matter. It's not our business. We promote PACE. 3 months later, it comes out she was on Adderall. And your boss comes to you and says, hey, did you know? Okay. How do you respond?
Well, I would say
he's muted again. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay. Yeah, I would definitely have certain, I would definitely back it with certain information that she's been on Adderall only for a couple of days a month. I thought that didn't stop her from getting promoted. That's what I would back myself up with, probably.
Okay, so I didn't think it was a big deal. She was just using a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Once or twice in a month or something like that. I knew that, but I thought her performance showed enough to promote her compared to the one-off situations.
Thank you. Avinash wants to get in. Let me hear what you have to say, Avinash.
Yeah. So many corporates have a regular checkups for everyone. So I think from there we can get some sort of information whether she's addicted to it or whether it's a genuine issue. So based on that report, we can have a conversation with her directly. If it is an issue, then you have to mention it, what's the reason for that. So there we can get some sort of clarity whether it's a genuine or fake, and based on that we can move ahead with the promotion. If it's a genuine, then we can go ahead with the candidate. Otherwise, we have to move on with next one.
So it's our weekly meeting on Wednesday. We celebrate birthdays. We make sure we're moving forward on the list of things to do. And just by the end of the meeting, we'll just do a random drug test.
So generally, what we have is that in corporates, we have a regular interval of checkups in 3 months or 4 months, something like that. Even during promotion.
Oh, okay. So you would wait until the regularly scheduled checkup.
Yeah, means generally we have a certain cycles for the promotions itself, in particularly, and during that time we can have that conversation whether you want to have it or not. But we have to see whether Adderall comes in the drug test or not. That's another issue. So
Yeah,
that might be a problem. But yeah, we have from there we have to figure it out whether we want to. If we don't get an information, then it's a risk. And if it is a risk, then I would rather move ahead with the second candidate.
Nice. Good. Let me come to Agam.
Yeah, I just want to put a broad question out there. So whenever, PACE would have signed her employment contract, does that contract state that I will ensure that I do not take any banned substances which can bring a bad name to the firm or whatever? So is she in violation of that contract? So that's a very structured approach to take for it. But also if she is, because at the beginning of this slide we established that she is taking this drug.
Yeah.
So maybe it's also an ethical question that if she's breaking the contract, then maybe she's breaking some other laws on the way as well. So a broader investigation needs to be put in place to do a complete background check of this person. And once you're in that kind of zone, maybe you'll not be on your way to a promotion.
Okay, so again, some suspicion here about her character, and I saw some comments about that also in the chat. So appreciate that. Go ahead, Melam.
Yeah, what I would like to say is that the responsibilities after the promotion would increase. So there is a very likely scenario that if PACE gets promoted, that she might just increase her dosage of taking those pills to act as a stimulant. And what we can also see over here is that Faraday has familial responsibilities, and despite those familial responsibilities and the stress, not just work-related stress, but also her familial responsibilities, that she is coping well with stress. So I think that why should we promote a person who is dependent on something which is not correct in the first way, because she's taking it unethically? So why should we promote such a person?
Okay, so you have concerns again about the risk, and it seems like the other candidate doesn't seem to have the same risk profile, and so why would you take that undue risk? Okay, here's what I'd like to do. The last question before we kind of wrap up. I want someone. Oh, Avanti, go ahead. Tell us what you're thinking.
So I was thinking more from a sustainability point of view, just to, add on to the last point that was mentioned, right? That Faraday is basically dealing with a stressful family, and she's basically working both on the familial side as well as on the corporate side, and still managing to make a good deal of money for the firm. And on the other side, PACE is using the stimulant to promote herself, or to probably push herself further and to get these deals. We don't know the facts of the scenario at the moment, but once the person gets promoted, how long will she be able to go with the use of this drug? There would be some point where there might be a burnout, and this drug might not help, and she might not be able to promote further value for the firm. But on contrast, if you see Faraday, she's doing it all by herself, so she might be able to push herself above and beyond without any external aid. So we need to think from a sustainability point of view also for the firm.
That's a really great point, right? So maybe this is short-sighted. Maybe we make an easy decision for the promotion, but then in 3 months or 6 months, there's a very different set of outcomes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, I want one of you, let's start. Agam, you have your hand up. I want to know specifically, what are you going to do in this situation? All right, give me specifically, step by step, how are you going to handle this situation?
Before that, can I just go back on the last point? Like, again, we don't have enough data to say that if PACE is also under some undue stress, maybe she has a lot of student loan debt to pay off. She's maybe she doesn't have that familial responsibility, but maybe she's also under a lot of stress, but doesn't bring it out, to her workplace. So
it's true,
we don't
right?
know that.
So a lot of the cases that we'll discuss at Darden are cases where there's lots of uncertainty, where we don't have all the data. And sometimes my students say, well, if I had this data, or if I knew more about this, here's what I would do. And then my alums come back and say, I wish I would have had as much data as we have in the case. And so that's a part of this, right? A part of this is we don't have all the information. So some of our plan, like Avinash said, could be to go collect some data. That's interesting and helpful. And Drew as well. Drew was talking about going and collecting, Googling and talking to medical experts. But I want to know what you would do in this situation. You're the leader in this situation. What do you do?
What would I do? I would first have a conversation one-on-one with Pace in a private setup, so that she doesn't feel that she's been called out publicly or something. I would like to know from her, I would sort of ask her if she's taking this drug and does she know that it's a banned substance and she's not supposed to be taking that as part of being as being part of the firm. And if she admits to her mistakes, which is a sign that she probably didn't have enough information, that she's not supposed to be doing it, and like she agrees that it's something that gives her an unfair advantage and would completely be okay with Faraday being promoted. I think that'll just make the team harmony. Like it will not break the team harmony. So if Faraday is promoted. So I'll have a conversation with Pace, make her understand that what she's doing is, unethical as per the firm's rules, and also that she'll have to, go through an internal inquiry or something to see if she can continue with the firm, even though she's a top performer. That does not, give her the edge that she can break a law and get away with it. At the same time, if she refuses and says, no, boss, I've not been taking this drug. I don't know where you got this information from. So then I'll have to go ahead with the internal inquiry anyway. But now I have more reason to promote Faraday, because it has been established that she's not only using this drug, boasting about it, but also lying about it to her seniors. So maybe she, again, bringing it back to her character, maybe she's lying about other things.
Okay, awesome. I like the way that you kind of thought about a couple of different paths here, like a little bit of a decision tree. So for the rest of us, when we look at Agam's plan here, what are the biggest sources of risk? If you were going to counsel him, if you were going to say, hey, friend, watch out for this. This is a risk in your plan. What would you tell him? What should he expect if he goes and implements this particular decision? Darshan, is that a hand in response to that question?
Yes. Yes. So the first question is that is manager the sole person responsible for promotion? Clearly not. So first talk to other managers and understand whether these kind of scenarios happen across the bank or is just one-off scenario. Talk to HR and understand what were the policies in place in case something like this comes up, because I don't want one single person to be blamed for not promoting a single individual. And the third thing is the roles of informal conversation within the company and its impact on the work culture and maybe policy changes, because we know in past there have been sexist comments which are passed in comment, and whether the same actions were taken in that scenario or whether those formal policies were given across the bank to just which were more prescriptive rather than solution oriented. So that is my approach towards the thing. So whatever Agam has said does make sense, but I would not directly jump on the gun and start making decision. I'll actually start creating a panel in place before taking any of the decision, because I want to keep my personal judgments aside while taking this decision.
Nice. So, okay. Thank you. I appreciate that, Darshan. Anybody else? Avinash, I thought I saw your hand up.
Yeah, I think Darshan covered, but I would like to add. You said that if you are recommending a senior for this promotion, so any corporate, I would believe they would take things objectively and they want to reduce the risk first and foremost. So most probably the promotion will fall to the another person in that case. Means they necessarily don't want to take a risk in this particular risk. That would be my personal opinion, irrespective of the personal matter. I would look at things very objectively in this case and move ahead with this next person.
Okay, so you're going to try to look at the situation objectively and minimize risk. Anybody else have something specific for Agam here? Go ahead, Melam.
Yeah, I'll just comment on the first part of what Agam said, that it's just that case might come out clean on this. And I would say that that is something that is a very remote possibility of she coming out clean on that, and she actually admitting that it's fine if Faraday gets promoted. It's something, it wasn't really, I don't think it would really happen in the actual world. So I would just I would possibly try to not just take that path.
Okay, so you got to be ready for Pace to not be okay with promoting Faraday, right? In fact, things could get pretty heated. Why are you promoting her? I'm a top performer. You don't know. I have a prescription. I have a prescription for Adderall. Why are you not promoting me? This is discrimination, Agam.
Yeah, I would rephrase that. I would say, ensure that if she's okay to not be promoted, I wouldn't bring up Faraday.
Okay.
For this offense, of course, and no other reason.
Okay, awesome. Anybody else? That's pretty good. Round of applause. Oh, go ahead, Pranav.
I think the biggest risk is holding on to pace in our firm as well.
Yeah.
So that's where the major risk is, when you just pointed out the risk. So we are going ahead with the Faraday, and we need to put it in right place, like probably a pay hike or something, I don't know, to make her feel happy and that she is respected in this organization. I know Adderall is one of the major component. We need to discuss it with her. At the same time, we need to make her feel that she is one of the valuable member of the team as well. So like going ahead with someone, who had given a bit or less results, like 12 million, or like the lesser results compared to the pace, and promoting her would definitely impact her her behavior to move to a different firm, because investment banks are always hand in hand. Like it's easy to move from one firm to another firm when you're making deals.
Great, that's a really good point. We could easily lose her, right? So if we make this decision to promote Faraday, then we have to be ready to either lose her or make her some other kind of offer for her to stay. Awesome. Round of applause. Agam, thank you for raising what you would do. Appreciate you for doing that.
Thank you.
Awesome. Let me just say a few words about kind of how we deal with these kinds of decisions. And I'm going to ask you to reflect on this conversation, and then we'll kind of zoom out a little bit more and talk about case method and what we're doing. So when I teach business ethics, it's a blend of psychology and kind of critical thinking humanities. And so we're trying to help our students build the ability to look at complex situations and have a judgment about what to do. Okay. When we bring folks into the lab, one of the things that we notice we put people in situations where they have to deal with these kinds of decisions that are not simple, right? They don't have a simple right or wrong answer. You can't say the answer is 7, go, right? Like you have to really think through their pros and cons to both sides. There's multiple conflicting perspectives. Do we think about it from a sustainability perspective, like Avanti was saying, or do we focus on like the immediate need of the position? And even though there's not one right or wrong answer, there are certainly better or worse answers, right? And many folks who come to get an MBA come from very technical backgrounds. And typically when we look at an organization, the nature of the problems in the organization are distributed differently. At the bottom of an organization or towards the bottom of an organization, the problems are relatively simple, right? There's a structure, there's a right answer. And the reason it's structured is so that it doesn't matter who makes the decision. If the person leaves in 6 months or we have to hire somebody else 2 years later, it doesn't matter because it's structured and we know how to assess good work, okay? We like to say that problems towards the bottom of an organization are agent neutral. But as you move up the hierarchy, problems become agent-centric. It matters if it's Vanisha or Avinash or Dhruv sitting in the seat, because your values, your relationships, your ability to think through these kinds of problems that cut across marketing and finance and HR, that matters. And your ability to affect the organization is really strong as you move up in the organization. And so that's why we're trying to train you to make these kinds of what we call high ambiguity decisions, because that's the kind of decisions that separate leaders from managers or technical experts. Does that make sense? So when we look in the lab and say, well, how do people make these kinds of high ambiguity decisions? Typically what happens when we compare particularly novices and experts, and I'll tell you a little bit more about how we differentiate those two, novices tend to have an intuitive reaction. I don't like pace. I don't like this Adderall thing. That makes me nervous. And then they go and they pick 2 or 3 facts that support their intuition, right? Everybody's heard of confirmation bias. And it can go the exact opposite way too. Somebody can say, oh, I really like Faraday, or I don't like Faraday, I like performance. And so I'm going to pick pace, and here are some reasons why. So once somebody has this intuition and they go back and they post hoc rationalize by picking the data, then they go off and they implement in the world. But because their perspective has been biased by their intuition, they end up tripping or bumping into things that they didn't imagine, right? The other side of the argument that they didn't imagine. When we look at experts, and these are folks with 10 plus years of decision-making experience, particularly in these high ambiguity kinds of decisions, they do something very different. They also have an intuition. They also have a strong feeling towards either Faraday or pace, but they don't take that intuition and treat it like their decision. They don't just say, oh, Faraday, go. They treat their intuition like a hypothesis. They say, I'm leaning towards pace. What could show me that I'm wrong? I'm leaning towards Faraday. How could I promote Faraday in a way that minimizes the risk? So right off the bat, they're thinking about their decision in much more complex ways. They're thinking about their decision as both, how do I promote a particular goal, but also how do I mitigate risk in a particular way? And this is a discipline that you can practice. This is something that you can get better at. And in my class and other faculty members' classes, these are the kinds of things that we like to prepare you for. There isn't a simple answer, but by listening to your colleagues from all over the world who have tons of experience and who have made sometimes similar decisions or have experience with the industry of the case, you start to flesh out some of your own experience and your own intuition about how to make these kinds of decisions. Let me pause for a second. What did you notice about our conversation? If you step back and try to reflect on what we talked about for the past 30 minutes, what jumps out at you?
Looking at different perspectives.
What about it?
So like most of the times, we think we are correct, but we might not be. So if someone is saying in a different different reasoning, that makes me think, probably that guy is right. I'm not exactly 100% sure on my reasoning.
That's a great point, Pranav, right? So different perspectives allow us to get a more detailed view of the situation. Our perspective might be based on a few data points or our own past experience, our own particular, sense of Adderall or what it takes to succeed in investment banking. Somebody else might notice some other things, and that causes us to pause and say, how can I think about this better or in more detail? There's a sobering statistic. Lots of managerial decisions actually fail to achieve their intentions, right? When we look at something like change management, the statistic that gets cited a lot is like 70% of change initiatives fail. There's a high failure rate. And part of the reason of this high failure rate is because the world we imagine and the world we encounter are very different. When you're planning in your office or in your cubicle or sitting in a meeting room, you might imagine a world that's very conducive to the decision that you want to make. Oh, I'm going to go and talk to Pace and she's going to be okay with the fact that I'm promoting Faraday. And then you get into the meeting and Pace is really upset. You're not ready for the world that you didn't imagine. And these different perspectives, when you're sitting in a Darden classroom and you've got 65 other folks who are helping you kind of imagine in more detail, can help close that gap between the world you imagine and the world you encounter, right? It helps inform your managerial judgment. Good. What else? One of the things you should know is that Darden faculty are trained to wait you out. We are very patient. Go ahead, Avanti.
So I'm saying that there are certain scenarios where we don't have enough factual information, and people in our class would have more information about that topic than you do. So when you have these kind of discussions, I think it opens up your mindset towards those facts. It's more of a general knowledge that you didn't actually possess before, and now you do because of these discussions.
That's a great point, right? So somebody has experience in a particular industry, or maybe experience with Adderall, whatever it might be, and you can learn from that. I think that's great. And it's really these high uncertainty or high ambiguity decisions where it makes sense to talk to others and to learn from different perspectives and get that information that you might not have had. When the answer is simple, you don't necessarily need to debate and discuss as much. Right? Because we know, okay, wait a second, this is how we calculate this particular thing, or this is the steps to get to the right answer. Let me pause here for a second. I'm going to stop sharing my slides so I can see you a little bit more clearly. This was just a little short experience. I know we're coming up on time, but I wanted to give you an opportunity to ask questions about kind of case method in general. What is it like, you know, for different classes? And I'll invite my wonderful Darden students to also contribute and share their perspective on this topic as well. What are you curious about when it comes to case method and what it's like to get an MBA this way? Go ahead, Drew.
Yeah, so one thing which I wanted to know is like throughout the entire discussion which we had today, you've been collecting our opinions from us. But in a case study method, does the professor normally bring in their views also, or does that turn out to be a bad idea because people will then just fixate on what the prof said at the end of the class? So like if I wanted to know your view on this case, is it a good idea to collect that, or would it cause me to lean a certain way very heavily? Like how does that?
Really good question. Darden students, how would you respond to that? They forgot they were at Darden.
I can take that.
Yeah, go for it.
So it's hard to say. I think like most of the professors, including Bobby, I can assume that they have a couple of key takeaways that they want from the class. So again, as it was mentioned, there's no right or wrong answer or right or wrong approach about it, but it's more about judgment. And that's the case in not only in ethics cases, but also in other subjects overall. So every professor does have some key takeaways that they want the students to focus on, but they generally try that students come to that takeaways on their own through the discussion. Like think of it like it's a musical orchestra and the professor is the conductor, and all the students are basically playing instruments. So conductor basically helps to make sure that the direction of the coordination is going on pretty well, or the discussions are going on the direction that he wants to go. But it's very rare that when professor will chip in and say, okay, this is how it should happen, because that's where learning happens. When you are struggling about an idea or trying to come to a very difficult solution on your own or with your friends, that's where you actually learn a lot about all those concepts that we are talking about.
Awesome. Thanks, Priyanka. I love the metaphor. Go ahead, Dhruva, you have a follow-up, and I'll come to you next, Avinash.
Yeah, so just to follow up on that, but so if we've talked about 10 different points, can we not know that which 2-3 were the most relevant or hit the meat of the discussion, and which ones were trivial points which might not have as much weightage on a decision-making process at the end? Like if we've listed down all of them as like the same weightage bullet points, I would want to know from the professor, like these 3 are actually good, really good points to focus on, and the others are things which are good to have, which you should just keep in mind.
Yeah, so we don't always come in and say like, these are the things that these are the clearest steps to the right answer, but we do have very clear tools and techniques. And we say, when discussing a case like this, here are some things you want to avoid, right? Here are the kinds of things that you want to make sure you pay attention to that are easy to forget. And so we tend to come in and make a lot of process recommendations, right? Rather than saying, okay, you should promote Faraday and not pace. In part because what we want you to do is we want you to take away things that you can actually apply at work, right? And the way that this problem is going to show up for you, somebody isn't going to come to you and say, hey, I'm on Adderall, what are you going to do? Like, this is not going to happen in the exact same way. but the decision-making process that you helped kind of build as you were wrestling with this is something that will be transportable. And so when faculty come in and kind of shepherd the conversation, we focus it on those process takeaways that are most applicable to you post Darden. It's a great question. Go ahead, Avinash.
Yeah, I think you answered in the previous line itself. My question was basically, so in business scenarios, we don't have very diverse opinions. Like here we have 65 people in the classroom. So in that case, mostly you will talk to your seniors in this particular case regarding promoting that. And in that, it will be a very narrow discussion, only two people discussing, and they might favor a particular direction. We won't be able to cover a lot of things in that. So as you mentioned previously, the process and checkpoints are in the place itself. So it kind of answers that. We will go from that direction. Yeah, I got that.
One of the things that I'll add to that great point is that, when I sat in a Darden classroom with 65 other of my classmates, I didn't agree with everyone, but I can still go back and think about, my classmate, they thought about this problem this way. And so even when I'm making a decision and I don't have my section of 65, I can still kind of reflect a little bit on how they might think about it, right? And kind of carry their perspective with me, even as I'm making decisions without them. And I think you'll find that too, that there are members of your section that you either really agree with or disagree with, or somebody whose perspective is very different than yours, that you kind of carry even outside of your section into your decision-making going forward.
That's the reason. Means internal biases will always be there in decision-making, and that comes very effective when we have only two people or one people making a decision. So that's right. The reason.
Great point. Go ahead, Raman.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, like, this was for a ethics class, so we all had some opinions and some logical assumptions behind it. But how about a case study method when the class is something like, means I am coming from a background from engineering. How about a case study method in something like accounting or finance heavy class where I don't know the concept itself?
Yeah.
So how the case study method will help me out there?
Awesome. Great question. Darden students, do you want to answer that?
Pratik, do you want to take it?
Oh, we just got cold called.
Cold call, right? This is toward the end of the class. Anyway, so I'll try my best. I guess, yeah, so for finance, you definitely have more or less the right answer. But the professor never reveals you the answer at the beginning. As that was a beginning question, right? So the professor, I get the way Bobby did it, is to like prompt you with the right questions. There's a debate, and then we come up. I think we all agree or disagree, but then there's a way. I think Priyank put it rightly. It's a conductor's role. So the orchestra keeps playing, and then the music definitely ends. But the professor takes you through different thought process and what the person, the decision maker in the case did at the end of the day. That's discussed towards the end of the class.
Yeah. One thing I'll add to that is, and we didn't get it in this kind of short exposure, is that most of our cases have something that we call a technical note. And a technical note is somewhere between like a 2 to 10 page theoretical summary. Think about it as like a chapter in a textbook that gives you the basic knowledge, right? So if you're in accounting, it might lay out, here's how you do a journal entry, and this is what a debit is, and this is what a credit is. If you're in finance, it might be, this is the weighted average cost of capital and how you calculate it. But then you apply that to the case, and in class with the faculty member, you're talking about the application. And yes, they're building on that foundational knowledge, but that foundational knowledge is mostly imparted through those technical notes. So what you would get by reading a textbook or by going to another business school and getting in lecture, you get through technical notes, but we want to make sure you build the muscle memory to actually apply it. So what we do is we spend our time on application rather than just memorize the technical note or like look at the slides and regurgitate back for me what the definition of a debit is and what the definition of a credit is. Now that you know, do it. Because then you'll remember better when you have the practice of actually applying it in the context of business problems that you're likely to see. I think we have time for one more. Chaitali, how are we on time? Are we okay?
Yeah, I mean, this is the last session for today. I mean, according to EST, we have a session in India time in the evening today for you guys. But yeah, we can take a few more questions.
Great. Go ahead, Milam.
Yeah, but just like to say that I really love the process. It's just that if a person wants to learn a concept, there are tons of things available over the internet, but working over here and like kind of taking different perspectives and then moving towards and then formulating of how you should be moving towards a conclusion is something that I really loved. I think it's a wonderful way to actually learn how to take business decisions. Thank you. It was a wonderful experience.
Thanks. I'm glad you enjoyed it. You know, it's not for everybody, but if it's for you, then I think you love going to class. You love doing the work. You love being with your colleagues, you know, and my alums, when they come back, they talk to me about their internships or their job after a couple of years. And what they'll say is, you can see the difference in Darden students compared to other business school students because they have a general management focus. So they can speak when the problem is more marketing focused and strategy focused and, you know, accounting focused. They don't just have a single expertise. They understand how these disciplines are connected to each other. And frankly, you learn at Darden how to be engaged. Like you do the work and you get your hand up there and you contribute to conversation. And so you're not passively waiting for a manager to tell you what to do. You have a perspective and you're active and you're engaged in the context of that work, which I think is really important in the corporate context to demonstrate that. So I loved all my time at Darden because I love learning this way. I learned so much from my classmates. It's active. You know, you're in group. Your section is roughly about 65 students, and so you get to know each other pretty well. That suited me in terms of learning style. I don't know if I saw something pop up in the chat there. Yeah, exactly. You're ready anytime. Awesome. Any other questions we can answer for folks or anything that you're curious about?
Hi, I just have one question regarding the grading, like, you know, because you're not discussing, I mean, like, we're not giving any exams, you know, how are you going to decide, like, you know, how about the grades, as in, I know like MBA doesn't think about the gradings, but, you know, I just want to think about a person like who is not discussing in the classroom, like probably will get very limited knowledge, right? So how are you gonna, I'm just thinking about your perspective, like you want everyone to engage. So
right. No,
so
I just picked my favorite ones. I'm just kidding. What Darden students, do you want to talk about grading? And I'm happy to add to. How does it show up?
So first of all, your grades are not revealed to anyone. That's one thing. And that's true for most B schools as well, right? You get to know your grades. How faculty members grade it is like, if for every subject, they'll let you know what's the contribution of the grade towards participation, towards any, you know, exam, or towards assignments, towards quizzes. So before you even take the course or start the quarter, you sort of know what would be the contribution of your participation towards the grade. And, you know, if you are the sort of person who wants to engage, wants to explore, you know, different perspectives in the classroom, like many of you were doing here today, and want to, you know, sort of imbibe that learning, as well as, you know, sort of want to get over the fear of speaking in front of other people, put your thoughts out there, you know, it's everyone's there to learn, basically, you know, in the classroom. It doesn't matter who's coming from which background. You're there to support each other, learn from each other. And you know, sections that you have in your core, everyone in your section will support you dearly, right? Like, you know, every time you make a great comment, they'll clap for you, they'll push you, they'll make sure that, you know, you're getting over your fear of speaking in front of everyone in the class. And so, you know, by the time you're in quarter two, basically, you can just like deal with cold calls like, you know, you're brushing in the morning, right? It just becomes like in nature. And, you know, that makes a big difference, because when you go for internships, you'll see the difference, because you won't be scared anymore of, you know, raising your hand and talking in meetings. And that's how Darden students have really been standing out, not just during summer internships, but also when they sort of go to get their full-time jobs. And yeah, so don't worry about grading, but if you're the sort of person who wants to get like a scholarship or wants to continue with a scholarship, grades will be important. You know, faculty members do a great job of noticing how students are sort of improving throughout the course, and they take that into account when they're grading as well. And Bobby, if I've missed out anything.
No, that was great, Chaitali. That was great. I just I'll make it a little specific. Like for my course, the grade is comprised of several different factors. Class participation is roughly 40% of your grade. You have a final exam that's 40% of your grade, and then you've got 2 written assignments that make up the difference, right? And so you get feedback on those assignments. And then you asked specifically about class participation. Every day, right after class, you can see here, I have my seating chart. As soon as class ends, I go through and I say, who spoke today? What did they say? And I grade. And different classes will have a different scale, but in my class, it's on a 1 through 10 scale. So if you raise your hand and say like a basic case fact, you get 1 point. If you move the conversation forward, like you make a good argument, or you propose, like Agam did today, what his plan was, or you provide a criticism of his plan, like you did, Pranav, that's a 5. And then very rarely somebody shares like a powerful story or asks a great question that pushes everybody's learning much higher. And I give those students a 10 for that day. And so what happens is, so every day, right at the end of class, that's the first thing I do is I record class participation that goes into a spreadsheet. At the beginning of each week, I also check, okay, who's at the top, who's at the bottom. I try to give opportunities to students who want it, who are kind of at the bottom, second half of class. Halfway through class, you get an email from me saying, here's where you rank, kind of the top, middle, or bottom third. Come see me if you want help, or if you'd like to participate more. What can I do to support you? And so we're giving you feedback about those kinds of things so that you can get the grade that you want to get.
Well, thanks a lot for explaining what goes through your mind. Like that sounds like a lot of work actually for
it is a lot of work, but it's worth it. I mean, we do a lot to make sure that the conversations in those 85 minutes for each class are productive, challenging, and that add value to your leadership and your decision-making ability.
That sounds great. Thanks.
If we don't have any more questions, I think we can wrap up for the night. Thank you so much, Bobby, again for being with us here today. I'm sure the audience had a great time hearing you going through the ethics caselet and also telling us a lot more about the Darden classrooms and how you think about teaching and creating as well. Thank you all for joining us today. I hope you had a great experience. Please take it forward. Think about if you want to join Darden, and we hope we can help you through your journey. And have a good day.
Bye, everyone. Wonderful to meet you. Hope our paths cross again.